Have you ever wondered what games you should keep or you should lose? Find out here at Purge Reviews.
Steel Driver is one of those classic Martin Wallace games. Any decision you make on a turn, very simple. You only have a few options available to you, but the decisions that come out of those, what seem and appear to be simple actions, can be long-lasting in these games. And he is a master of this. What do we get here? We get a board game box that kind of reminds me of John Henry a little bit, and it's kind of misleading because this is a train game. You're like, hey, the locomotive is that was John Henry, but that wasn't really the essence of John Henry. So what we get instead is really like a light 18XX type game, sort of, not really, but maybe a Martin Wallace spin on it. This is one of those games where I put a written review up, changed course on it, got some dialogue going about it, and I don't think my opinion is very popular. I think this is a really fun game with some streamlined components and some streamlined actions. And the more I kind of sat and thought about this game, I was like, hey, this game is actually pretty deep on what you're doing. I called it a light to medium game. Maybe it's a little bit light or medium in what actions you take, but much, much deeper and heavier based on the repercussions of those actions and what you're actually trying to do. I think it's a fun game. It's probably not one of my favorite train games, which is why it's a purge. I don't find myself going back to it. I think that it works better with more players. It doesn't really work that well as a two-player experience. And I feel like you need that interactivity between the players in order to really, really get it going. Steel Driver is a very good, competent, fun game. And I think a lot of people get hung up on whether I'm keeping or purging it. The keeping and purging is more of my personal collection, and I can still recommend this game. I mean, for people that want a train game or want that kind of that bidding atmosphere of like a light 18XX game, I suppose. And I might get some crap for that, but I kind of feel like it goes into that vein a little bit. This is about as classic Martin Wallace, if you ask me, as you're going to get. People say, what's a classic Martin Wallace game? I could point to Steel Driver. It's something I could easily recommend to people. Very deep decisions. You really have to plan things out if you want to do well. And then in a game like this, you really are playing against those people at the table with you versus the game mechanisms themselves. So you really need to be ready to have some of that short-term and long-term planning as you're going through. And the game is brilliant for that. Steel Driver really is a masterpiece for me. Even though it doesn't really fit into our playing style, so it'll be a purge, and not something that we keep going back to. I think there are a lot of people who do enjoy this game and feel passionate about it. And I think this is one of Martin Wallace's better games. Here is a Steel Driver with a kind of a weird thing here with, I guess it's supposed to be like a John Henry type character, but these guys standing on this I just thought was a funny little thing. This is a Martin Wallace game. As you open it up, you're going to see a rule book, which we'll take a look at in a few minutes. And then you're going to get a bunch of woods. You're going to get different tracks and different colors. You're going to have let me show you what some of this looks like here. You're going to get like a little ownership of that, some of these circle wooden ones, and these little wood things. These are very popular at the time for train games. And you're going to get these in a number of colors. You're also going to get paper money, which just kind of acts as victory points in the game. They don't really do anything else. Any number of cubes that you're going to have. You've seen all of this before. Just a bunch of wood. Martin used to love putting these in his games back in the day. Here is the map. You can see you have the order of play. You can pass the profit mark going up here. You don't really see things like this too much anymore. That's kind of weird. You're going to have the company box up there. They're a little small, but they work okay. And then the map of the United States that you'll be building as you go through. Here's the rule book for Steel Drivers. You open up. This is how most Martin Wallace's games, at least of the time, you can have an overview, a little bit of a story. You can have a picture of the components, all the little wooden things that you're going to have, and how to start up and set up the game. Then you're going to have a board and an overview here, what all the spots mean, and then playing the game. An overview, and then they'll break down each one as you go through. The rules are really just a couple pages. The transcontinental link that you have here, which is a special little rule, and then on the back, you're going to have a guide that will go through everything. This is an excellent rule book. I always find his to be pretty good. Some designer notes if you want to go through that. But I found the rule book, the game is pretty simple. It looks a little bit harder than it is. There's some concepts that will be new for some gamers, but the rules really are a snap if you play through it. In the game, you're going to play 5 rounds of the game, and whoever ends up with the most money, or really these are just victory points, will be the winner of the game. Each round is going to play out exactly the same. You're going to get a number of these white cubes. These white cubes are going to be called investment cubes. And during the round, each player is going to get a number of these based on the round and number of players in the game. Then each round, players are going to auction off to have control of a certain company. In this case, I'm just going to show you blue. So let's say I win the auction and I win with a score of 4. So what I would do is I would take over the control of it. As you can see here, I'd put my 4 investment cubes, which now become property of the company. I no longer own those investment cubes, the company does. And that's something very important to understand in this game. There's going to be the company owning things, and there's going to be me owning things. And there are quite a few games, like 18xx games, that do this, but this is going to be new for a lot of people. So now that I've won the auction, I'm going to have control or ownership of this, and you'll auction off each one of the companies, and everybody will take ownership of them. So in this case, I now own blue. After each of the companies are auctioned off and somebody has taken ownership, now I could have ownership of all of these, one of these, none of these, 2 of these. The players just auction off their cubes and you win what you win. Then we'll move into building the track, and you'll be using things like this to build the track. So if I have ownership of the blue, I'll be laying down blue track. If I have ownership of the red, I'll be laying down red track, and etc. And there's different track for each of the different colors. You will take turns building track, and each of these blue spots will have a cost associated with it. Let's zoom in a little bit on here. You can see this is a $20 value. It's 3 if I wanted to build one here. The cost would be 3 here, 3 here, 2 here, 2 here, and 4 if I was going to build out of Kansas City over to Denver here. So you can see all the different little prices. Well, you don't actually spend money to build this. So let's say that I wanted to build coming out of Omaha right here with the blue. So what I would do is I would go back up here to my little box, and I would have to spend 3 of the investment cubes, not from my hand, but from the company, in order to pay for that. So I pay for the 3 investment cubes. They go back to the supply, and now the track has been laid down. Now the first track you lay down always has to come from a hexagon like Spokane or Seattle, one of these. Seattle over here, San Francisco, Los Angeles. It'll come out with those hexagonal ones. You got a few on this side of the map too. But as you build through, you'll be able to build track, and it will go further and further out based on what you want. Now, let's go back to our example here between Denver and Omaha. So if you look here, 40 for Denver and 20 for Omaha. Doesn't matter which one, but I will pick one of those out. Obviously the higher one, right? That's going to score me more. And then the tracker will move up here. So I did a 40. I can pick either 40 or 20. I want more profit, not less. So I'm going to choose the 40, and I'll move this up on the 40. Once everyone is done building track, we're going to go 1 blue, 1 red, on down the line. Whoever has ownership is going to get a number of victory points based on where the profit is. So in this case, I'm blue, let's say, and blue is on 40. I would receive 40 victory points, or $40, if you will, for the profit of that. So now, if I don't use a cube, it will stay up there for the next round. I make it more valuable. So let's say there was 4 here, and then next round somebody added 3 more for a total of 7. That's going to make that a little bit more enticing because they're going to be able to run up the profit that round. In each round, this profit will go back down to 0 at this point. So once the profit is paid out, those are victory points you're going to earn, and you're never going to spend them or use them. Even though they come in the form of money, they're just victory points. At the end of the game, you're going to have networks everywhere on the board, and after the game is played, you're going to put cubes out on the board based on the color of the location. So you put a red on a red, etc. And then based on whoever owns the most shares in a company, you'll be able to pick these cubes off based on, this is after the game has ended. And then based on that, you're going to use this handy dandy chart to see how much additional money it is. So for 1 cube, it's $10. If you had 5 cubes set, you get $150. So there's going to be a payout of these cubes at the end of the day. So you want to make sure whichever company is going all out, you might want to have the most shares in that because you might get the most cubes at the end of the game, which can be worth extra victory points. So you definitely want to have stock ownership in a business that is most profitable, perhaps. And you'll be bidding on that and building the track as you go. So that's pretty much how the game works. It's a little stock market, not stock market really, but this root building thing where you want the cubes to come out, you just kind of generate money, you want to be in control. So it's not necessarily you want to be in control of all the companies, you want to be in the ones that you can make most profitable in a round, and you're going to use those investment cubes to do so. So that is Steel Driver. Who should buy this game? If you're a fan of Martin Wallace, you probably already own this game. If you like train games, looking for something a little lighter on the 18XS spectrum, I think this would strike that for you. If you're looking at something maybe dipping your toes in those waters, easily recommend this. Or if you just want like a train game and you want something that might be moderately priced nowadays and you want simple components, this will do it for you. I don't know that it had a staying power for us just because we don't tend to play games like this very often, but it did stick around for almost a decade with us, it seems like. So Steel Driver has been a success for us. We may have played it out perhaps, but it's definitely a game that I can easily recommend to board game players.